Is that your first badge?
Nightmare.
You had your chance, officer.
The battle might be over, but the duty never really ends.
The old motorcycle rumbled softly, like a heartbeat that had seen too much. It pulled into the parking lot of a dusty convenience store, just like it had every Tuesday morning for the past 6 years. The man who rode it, thin, gray-bearded, wearing a faded military jacket, stepped off with care, as if the weight of the world still sat on his shoulders. Nobody looked twice. Not the cashier inside. Not the couple arguing by the soda machine. To them, he was just another old man with nowhere to be. But Officer Trent, fresh out of the academy, was different. He'd parked across the street, sipping lukewarm coffee and reading the morning report. A line caught his eye: be on the lookout for a black motorcycle. Possible connection to overnight burglary. Suspect unknown. And just like that, the quiet morning shifted. He glanced across the street. There it was. Black frame. Old model. No license plate visible. Officer Trent straightened his uniform and approached. The man had just stepped out of the store with a small paper bag, eggs, milk, 2 cans of beans. Trent called out, "Sir. Can I have a word?" The man turned slowly. His eyes were calm. Too calm. "Just need to ask you a few questions," Trent continued, trying to sound confident. The old man didn't speak. Didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. Instead, he placed the paper bag gently in the motorcycle's basket. "Sir, I need to see some ID." Still no response. Trent's hand moved closer to his belt, nervous fingers brushing near the handcuffs. The air felt heavier now. Even the wind had stopped. "Look," Trent said, stepping forward. "There was a break-in last night. Your bike matches the description. I just need to make sure." And then he saw it. A patch. Barely visible beneath the frayed collar of the jacket. 82nd Airborne Division. Trent hesitated. He had uncles who served. One of them used to say, "Don't ever judge a soldier by how quiet he is. The quiet ones, they've seen more than you'll ever understand." But this wasn't the time for hesitation. A command was a command. And the badge demanded action. "I need you to cooperate, sir. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." Still, silence. Not defiance. Not arrogance. Just stillness. The kind of stillness that made you feel like you were the one being watched. Then, softly, so softly Trent almost missed it, the man spoke. "Is that your first badge?" Trent blinked. "Excuse me?" The man finally turned toward him fully. "I asked," he repeated, "is that your first badge?" Trent nodded, unsure. The man gave a faint smile. Not mocking. Not proud. Just tired. "Then listen closely," he said. "Because this is the last time you'll be able to walk back without regret." "What does that mean?" Trent asked, confused. The man didn't answer. Instead, he sat back down on the motorcycle, slowly, deliberately. His right hand rested on the handlebar. His left, still holding that paper bag. Trent raised his voice now. "Sir, step away from the bike. This is your last warning." Still, no movement. But the stillness wasn't silence anymore. It was waiting. Something was coming. Trent felt it in his bones. In the way the birds had gone quiet. In the faint rumble, far, far off in the distance. He looked around. And then, he heard it. A deep, mechanical growl. Growing louder. Like thunder, but rhythmic. Tracked. Heavy. The ground trembled ever so slightly beneath his boots. Trent squinted down the road. Dust. Then shapes. Big ones. A convoy. Humvees. At least 6. Maybe more. Moving slowly. Deliberately. Straight toward them. The man on the bike didn't even glance. He just said, quietly. "You had your chance, officer." The roar of the Humvees grew louder. Closer, like a memory waking from a long sleep. Officer Trent took a step back. His hand, still near his belt, was now shaking. The motorcycles. The silence. Now this? He looked toward the man on the bike. Still seated. Still holding the bag. Still unmoved. Then the first Humvee appeared from the dust. Olive drab. Covered in dents and old paint. But it didn't feel old. It felt alive. Behind it came another. And another. By the time the fourth vehicle rolled in, Trent realized, this wasn't a coincidence. They weren't just passing through. They were coming here. He grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Trent at Maple and 7th. We've got military vehicles approaching. At least half a dozen. I need backup. Now." Static. Then a voice, "Did you say military?" "I said what I said," Trent snapped. "Get the chief." The Humvees came to a stop. Not in a rush. No sirens. No honking. No shouting. Just stillness, again. Doors opened. Boots hit the ground. Some wore uniforms. Others wore jeans and hoodies. But the way they moved, in sync, heads high, no wasted steps, you could tell they weren't ordinary men. They were trained. They were watching. Trent counted, 9, 10, no, 12. 12 men. And one woman. All staring directly at him. He could feel the sweat run down his back. Even though the morning was cool. The group parted. And through them walked a tall man in a tan combat jacket, clean-shaven, calm, with a sharp gaze that cut through the air like a blade. He had no rank patch. No medals. But something about the way the others moved told you, he didn't need them. This man had led them once. Maybe still did. Trent took a breath. "Sir. I don't know what's going on, but this is a civilian matter. You need to step back." The man said nothing at first. He walked right up to the motorcycle. Put a hand gently on the old man's shoulder. The old man nodded, still not speaking. Then, finally, the tall man turned toward Trent. "My name's Captain Morgan. U.S. Army. Retired." Trent forced a half nod. "Officer Trent. City PD." "I know who you are," Morgan replied. That sent a chill down Trent's spine. Morgan continued. "The man you're trying to arrest? He saved 13 lives in a village the world forgot. Took a bullet that should have hit me. He took a step forward. I owe him my life. So do all of them." He gestured to the group behind him. None of them blinked. None of them spoke. They were a wall. And Trent was very much alone. "I don't want trouble," Trent said, trying to hold steady. "I'm sure you don't," Morgan said softly. "But you already called for backup." Trent's radio buzzed again. "Chief's en route. ETA 4 minutes." Morgan nodded. "Then we'll wait." He stepped back. No shouting. No pushing. Just, waiting. Trent turned in place, eyes darting between the dozen veterans. The radio, and the man still sitting quietly on his bike. He wasn't resisting. But somehow, he was winning. That was the most terrifying part. The sirens came next. 3 squad cars. Doors flung open. Out stepped Chief Daniels, stocky, red-faced, and visibly annoyed. "What the hell is going on here, Trent?" "Sir, I stopped this man for questioning." And then Daniels saw the convoy. Then saw Captain Morgan. His face changed. Not fear. Not anger. But recognition. He walked up. Slowly. "Morgan," he said. "Didn't expect to see you again." Morgan gave a tight nod. "Didn't plan on it." Daniels looked toward the old man. "That him?" Morgan answered, "That's him." Daniels sighed. "Trent, stand down." "But sir." "I said stand down." The tension in Trent's shoulders dropped, only slightly. He stepped back, hands raised. Captain Morgan turned one last time toward Trent. "No one came here to start a war. But if a man who bled for this country can't buy milk without being treated like a criminal." He paused. "Then maybe it's not him who forgot the rules." Captain Morgan stood silently. His eyes on the chief. But his mind was somewhere far from Maple Street. Somewhere hotter. Louder. Where the dust didn't settle, and the silence never lasted long. 12 years ago, Kandahar province. It was a Tuesday. They never remembered the dates. Only the days. Their unit had been stationed outside a village no one could pronounce. Routine patrol. Same dirt roads. Same kids waving. Same dogs barking in the distance. Then came the blast. Not loud at first, just a tremor. Then another. Smoke. Gunfire. Chaos. Morgan had only 3 seconds to react. He called for cover. Grabbed the radio. Started barking orders. But one man didn't wait. Sergeant Hal Gramps Walker. 52 years old. Oldest in the unit. Rode an ancient motorcycle back home. Said it helped him think. Gramps ran straight into the fire. Not away from it. Into it. 2 young privates had been pinned down by enemy fire. One was already bleeding out. Morgan had told him to hold. He didn't. Instead, Gramps kicked open a rotted door, drew fire toward himself. And dragged both kids behind a crumbling wall. He took the hit. Right shoulder. Shattered the bone. Didn't scream. Didn't stop. Just handed Morgan the bleeding private and said, "Get him home. Captain. You promised." Back to the present. Gramps still hadn't spoken. He sat on his motorcycle, like always. Hands on the handlebars. Eyes calm. Chief Daniels cleared his throat. "What's he doing here, Morgan?" Morgan turned his head slowly. "Same thing I'm doing." Daniels shifted. "You know I've got to follow protocol. And I'm not stopping you," Morgan said evenly. "But if protocol says we arrest a decorated combat vet for looking like someone else." He stepped forward slightly. "Then maybe protocol needs a rewrite." Daniels looked torn. He turned toward Gramps. "You want to explain what's in the bag?" Gramps blinked. Finally, he spoke. "Eggs." Everyone paused. "Milk." He tapped the brown bag. "Couple apples. And a card for Lisa, she's turning 9 next week." Daniels stared at him. "You're telling me you got 12 soldiers, 4 Humvees, and a damn captain showing up, over groceries?" Gramps looked at Morgan. Morgan shrugged. We don't leave our own behind. Not again. Daniel sighed. He pinched the bridge of his nose. You realize this looks insane. Morgan replied. It looks like loyalty. Something this town used to understand. One of the younger veterans stepped forward. He held out an old photograph, faded and bent. Daniels took it. 6 men. Covered in sand and grime. One missing an arm. One with his face half burned. In the center, Gramps. Smiling. Above the photo, in faded ink. He got us home. Danielle's expression shifted. The wind picked up. Police radios crackled. Birds flew overhead. No one spoke. Then, Chief Daniels walked over. He looked at Gramps. Then looked at Trent. Case dismissed. Let him go. Trent opened his mouth. Closed it. Morgan walked to Gramps. Put a hand on his shoulder. Ready? Gramps nodded. The Humvees turned. Engines roared softly. Morgan looked back, one last time. To serve doesn't end with discharge, he said. It echoes. The street began to breathe again. The flashing lights faded. The sirens fell silent. But in the hearts of those who had stood witness, something had changed. Captain Morgan stood beside Gramps, watching the young officer slowly holster his weapon. No words. Just a nod. A quiet glance of respect. From across the street, a small boy ran over, breathless. Mr. Walker. Gramps turned, surprised. The boy held up a crumpled sheet of paper. You dropped this. Gramps unfolded it. A drawing. A Humvee. An old man. A little girl smiling beside him. Gramps blinked. He whispered, That's Lisa. Morgan turned to Chief Daniels. Do you see now? She asked. Sometimes, protecting the law means knowing when not to follow it blindly. Daniels exhaled. His tone softened. I didn't know who he was. You never asked, Morgan said. Silence lingered between them. Not tense. Just true. The unit began to disperse. One by one, the Humvees pulled away. Some veterans stopped to shake hands with townspeople. Others just nodded. Their medals glinting in the late sun. Gramps stood, brushing dust from his jacket. He looked at Morgan and smiled. Thought you forgot me, Cap. Morgan smirked. Hard to forget the man who carried half the squad on his back. Gramps chuckled softly. Then turned toward the officers nearby. His eyes landed on Trent. I'm not your enemy, son, he said gently. Just an old man who's seen too much. Trent looked down, ashamed. I'm sorry, sir, he whispered. Morgan stepped closer and placed a hand on Trent's shoulder. Mistakes don't define you, she said. How you answer them, does. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the road. Gramps pulled on his helmet. Morgan gave him one final nod. Go home, Gramps. Lisa's waiting. The motorcycle engine growled to life. And in that moment, something passed between them. Not in words. But in duty. In memory. In the silent bond that says. The battle may be over. But the mission never truly ends. The engine of Gramps' motorcycle echoed faintly as it disappeared down the long stretch of road, like the last line of a song no one wanted to end. Its rumble faded into the summer air, replaced only by the hush of wind brushing the storefronts and the occasional creak of a wooden sign swinging above a shuttered diner. One by one, the crowd that had gathered began to drift away. Some walked slowly, heads bowed, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Others stood in place a little longer, caught in the stillness. as if trying to etch the moment into memory. No one spoke loudly. No one laughed. There was something sacred in the air. Because all of them, every single soul on that sidewalk, had witnessed something rare. Something that didn't fit into news headlines or courtroom transcripts. Something deeper. Chief Daniels stood alone near the courthouse steps, arms crossed, his broad frame still, yet visibly moved. His eyes were fixed on the horizon where the motorcycle had vanished. As if willing it to return, or perhaps as if saluting its rider in silence. Morgan stepped beside him, quiet in his presence. Daniels broke the silence first. His voice was lower now. Almost reverent. "I didn't expect a parade," he muttered. Morgan shook his head. "It wasn't a parade," he replied softly. "It was a promise being kept." Daniels nodded slowly. Thoughtfully. "He really saved all of you?" he asked, glancing sideways. Morgan's eyes didn't leave the horizon. "Twice," he said. "Once in combat. Once after." Daniels turned. Following Morgan's gaze until it landed on the young officer, Trent, now leaning against his cruiser. The kid's head was lowered, his thoughts clearly far from this street. Somewhere deep inside himself. Daniels took a breath. "He's a good kid," he said. "Just saw the world in black and white." Morgan gave a faint smile. Today, he saw the gray. Daniels considered that. "That's where the truth usually lives," he said quietly. A moment passed between them. Heavy, but calm. Then Daniels extended his hand, not out of obligation, but out of something deeper. "We may wear different uniforms," he said, "but I respect what you did today." Morgan took the handshake. Firm. Grounded. Not as ceremony, but as understanding. "We don't fight for medals, Chief," he said. "We fight for each other." From behind them, footsteps approached. Trent. He stopped in front of Morgan, his face unreadable at first, but softer than before. There was something new in his eyes. Not pride. Not shame. Just honesty. "I was wrong," Trent said. His voice cracked, just barely. "About everything." Morgan looked at him. Not as a superior. Not as a veteran. But simply, as a man. "There's no shame in learning," he replied. "Only in refusing to." Trent hesitated. Then reached out his hand. Morgan took it. The shake was quiet. Solid. A bridge being built, plank by plank, in silence. Above, in a second-floor apartment across the street, a curtain shifted. A small face appeared. Lisa. The little girl who had started it all. She pressed her hand to the glass and waved toward the road, even though the motorcycle was long gone. As if she knew, or believed, that heroes could still hear you. No matter how far they'd ridden. Daniels smiled at the sight. "Looks like someone's waiting for her hero," he said, eyes softening. Morgan followed his gaze. Watching the child with a stillness in his breath. Then he turned back to the street. The shadows had grown longer. The heat of the day had settled. But what lingered was not temperature. It was the weight of truth, and memory. He walked to his Humvee, boots crunching softly on gravel. Before stepping in, he turned once more to Daniels. "You know what makes a country worth fighting for?" he asked. Daniels raised an eyebrow. "Not flags. Not laws," Morgan said. "It's people who remember." He closed the door. The engine came to life with a low growl, but not one that shattered the stillness. It was more like a respectful whisper. A signal. A farewell. And just like that, the last soldier rolled away. The street returned to silence. But it was not the silence of emptiness. It was a sacred kind of silence. The kind that follows truth. The kind that stays long after the echoes fade. I want to share this story to reach the hearts of those who've forgotten, and those who feel forgotten. Because behind every folded flag, every silent morning, and every name etched in stone, there is a story still waiting to be heard. This is not a war story. It's a human one. It's about the man who still flinches at fireworks. The woman who checks her rearview mirror out of habit. The father who holds his child, wondering how to explain the years he missed. The neighbor who smiles politely but never really talks about the time before. They are veterans. But more than that, they are survivors. Of battles both seen and unseen. You see, we often think of soldiers as images on a screen, uniforms, salutes, parades. But the truth is more quiet. More personal. More permanent. A veteran is not just who they were in the war. It's who they became after it. It's the strength to keep going when the crowd has stopped clapping. It's the courage to live in a world that forgot to wait for them. It's waking up in peace. Yet still carrying the weight of war. Some carry scars on their bodies. Others carry them in their silence. And so today, I'm not here to tell a heroic tale of victory or medals. I'm here to honor the everyday resilience. The quiet grace. The unseen fight. Because honoring veterans isn't just about remembering what they did. It's about recognizing who they still are, long after the uniform comes off. So to every veteran who has ever wondered, do they still remember? Let me answer clearly. We do. Here, in this space. We remember. We respect. We will never let your service be a forgotten whisper in history. If this message touched something inside you, even quietly, let it be more than a moment. Share it. Not for likes or views, but for the one veteran who needs to know they're not alone. Speech balloon comment below if you know a hero whose name the world should never forget. Movie camera subscribe to Honor Path, because here, we don't just tell stories. We carry them, with care. Because sometimes, the loudest form of gratitude is simply to listen. And to say, you are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are still seen. Still honored. Still loved.